Monica Cox here, Dr. Monica Cox. I am excited to come to you in the middle of the day just because it's important to process some of the comments that are out on social media, particularly LinkedIn, and to have professional conversations. As people are looking for thought leaders, they're looking for ways to process what they're going through on a daily basis. So, I am going to bring you one of the comments that has me thinking, and I hope that you will engage as well. So, this will be posted on LinkedIn, of course, but it will also be posted on YouTube. Make sure that you engage with me in the chat or possibly in real time. Okay, so today's topic is about freedom. And I think it's really important to talk about freedom because in the US, we just celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a national holiday that was started in the 1980s to honor Martin Luther King. I also mentioned that as we have the complex conversations about DEI, people are going off. They're popping off on what Dr. King would have said, what he wouldn't have said, what he would have approved, what he wouldn't have approved. Would he have been pro DEI? Would he have been anti DEI? And there just seems to be this sound bite that is really focused on Dr. King, really focusing on the content of your character, not the color of your skin. So a lot of people are looking at that and they're connecting it to this idea of merit. So he would not support affirmative action, for example. That's what people would say. And I think the takeaway from that is to read all of his work in context, look at everything that he stood for, everything that he marched for, all the speeches, all the protests, all the advocacy that he had across class, race, um, and so many other um, aspects. It is not just about everyone being equal, so to speak. And I feel like everyone wants to reduce it to that. We want to look at people's ability to be free. We want to look at everyone's ability to speak and say what they need to say without fear of being harmed by organizations or governments or systems that oppose what they have to say. So that is applicable to everyone, just not one person. So I'm going to start off by saying that as we talk about freedom. So I also posted a couple of weeks ago, after the resignation of Dr. Claudine Gay, that the following day, everyone could not speak out the way that they wanted to speak out. And that meant that there was this disappointment among many people in the Black community, particularly Black women, about Dr. Gay's credentials constantly being questioned, despite the rigorous process that one has to go through, usually in academia. And as a scholar, there are so many places to be vetted. So I'll just kind of break it down for those of you who are not in academia and may not be familiar with what this process is. So if you are a professor, many times when you're in graduate school, of course, you have a graduate advisor. So this is someone who supervises your research. In the STEM fields, particularly like I'm familiar with engineering, you are often funded on projects where you are held accountable. You have to write um, papers, you have a dissertation defense, you have all these things, you have qualifying exams. So you go through milestones that move you to getting your degree. And when you have your dissertation, it's not just one person saying that your work is great. It is a committee of people with expertise across various fields who are telling you that your work is acceptable within the community. Sometimes you have to engage in revisions. And then if you do that, of course, there's that vetting process, and people have to sign off on that. When you start publishing papers, it goes through a peer reviewed process, usually, particularly in our top tier journals. So you have people who know the research, people who have looked at the methodologies, and they can critique you and offer advice so that your paper is what it should be by the time it is published. Also, when you write grants, you have panels of reviewers who critique your work, and you are given a rubric. When you engage in higher education and you are hired, you usually have a search committee that is evaluating you as well. When you're going up for promotion, there's another evaluation. When you apply to any leadership position, there's usually another evaluation. And so higher ed is just full of a lot of evaluation. I want to put that out there. But I'm going to come back to today's topic, which is focused on what I want to call the freedom questions. And so, in looking at freedom, what exactly does that mean? And if you cannot get on a platform like LinkedIn, similar to what I'm doing a LinkedIn Live, and talk about some of the issues that are concerning you when it comes to equity, when it comes to race, when it comes to those things that maybe connect to your identity, then I want you to question whether you truly are free. That's what today's session is about. And so I want to give you a few questions that you can think about. So if you speak what's on your mind, are you able to keep your job? That's one thing. Can you keep your job? If you say that you empathize with someone, how will that impact your job? And I want you to break that down a little bit. So, will you get a reprimand? Will you be talked about? Will someone say they don't trust you to be their supervisor anymore? What does that look like? And if you cannot speak, then you're not truly free. Another question, will you be reported? And the reporting can be any types of things, but in that organization, especially if there are no rules that exist, will you be reported for what you're saying? So are people making up rules on the fly? Are they saying that they don't agree with you just because you said it, but then they have nothing to back it up? What does that look like? So I want you to think about that. Will you lose your status by speaking up in an organization where you have your six-figure salary? So if you say this is unacceptable, this is against the principles or the norms of this organization, does that discredit you in the eyes of the people in the room? Does that do something so that your, like I said, your reputation is jeopardized? Also, reprimanding is really real. So not just being reported, but will you be reprimanded if you say something that does not align with the expectations or the actions in that organization? What does that look like? And if you can think of any other options, any other things that are happening, I want you to write them in the post as well. What are some other ways that people are reprimanded? So let's just take a few moments to talk about that. So while I wait for you to put that down, I want to also tell you a little bit of a story. So in 2020, we saw a lot of people ascend to positions after the murder of George Floyd. These were people who maybe leveled up in terms of administrative positions and power. But we also need to ask, based on those positions, do you have real power? Are you really able to dismantle or transform situations without the consequences that I mentioned before? And if not, I want you to evaluate that. Another thing, when I posted this on LinkedIn, it had almost 60,000 impressions, and there were so many people who were talking about the balance between the delicate balance between professional success and freedom of expression. And there was an administrator, a higher ed administrator, who talked about this as well. And I think that we are coming to a place in 2024 where we're going to have to figure out, as there's more turmoil in the world, Is the workplace where we need to share some information? Are we protecting people? Are we really centering on the values that are important to us? And how important are those values as we demonstrate them in the workplace? So that's something I want you to think about too. And think about power, the power that you have. When you are in a position of power, are you using it to uplift others? Are you using it to transform systems? I call that being an equity accomplice because it means that you recognize that the system that you're in may not be equitable to everyone in that system, and you play a role in moving that system forward. So, how are you going to do it? What does that look like? What do you think your responsibility is? So, I will just end today's session by saying that if you're someone who truly wants to be free, if you want to have more conversations with people about not just believing things behind closed doors, but wanting to demonstrate this publicly, then I want to chat with you, get into my DMs, contact me because I think that there's an opportunity for you to move forward on this journey. I want you to have it all. I want you to have the bank account. I want you to be there for your family, but I want you to also have the mental stability and the physical and emotional stability to say, this is what I believe. And I don't want to have to go against my core for a job or for a dollar. So, what does that look like? So, contact me at Dr. Monica Cox on all social media platforms. I'm LinkedIn, Dr. Monica Cox, and then info at drmonicacox.com. So let's just start and continue to ask these really difficult conversations. Um, about the difficult questions to the conversations about how we're moving forward, how we're showing up at work. Are we happy with how we're showing up at work? Are we wanting more than a paycheck? Are we wanting more than a title? Do we also want to have the voice to speak out as we need to protect not only ourselves, but other people in the environment as well? And so if you are struggling with that, I want you to know that you're not alone. And the traditionally like the corporate structures in higher ed has been set up for us to conform. But as our nation, as our world changes, shouldn't we change also? So drop comments below. Let me know what you think. Reach out and let's continue to have these conversations. I appreciate you.